Welcome into the Pursuit of Manliness podcast, where we are vigorously equipping men to pursue biblical manliness. My name is Jarrett Samuels. I'm the host of the podcast. Men, as always, I'd like to begin by thanking you for checking out today's show. Whether you're watching this on YouTube, listening to this wherever you grab your podcast audio content, thank you for checking it out. When you get the opportunity, visit thepursuitofmanliness.com. You can find this podcast episode, the whole catalog of 400 plus podcast episodes. You can see what's available in the gear store, learn more about our fall men's retreat, learn more about the herd, etc. I want to remind you that the Friday podcast is sponsored by Dark Water Woodwork, darkwaterkc.com. Now, when you go to darkwaterkc.com, you're going to find a plethora of products. We always highlight the beard care products because if you use the discount code that I'll give you in the podcast today, you'll save money on your next order. But what Doug really wants me to tell you this time is this. A portion of all beard care product sales will go directly to the Central Missouri Stop Human Trafficking Coalition. And that's the question we all ask. What can I do to help? Doug says, here's something you can do. You buy some beard care products from him. He takes a portion of that. He gives it to that coalition. Listen, if you go to his social media, you'll see him meeting with those people, bringing them checks. And I know Doug doesn't just send them a check. He's been a part of their conversation. So men, click on that link in the show notes. You'll learn more about what Doug's doing, more about Darkwater KC. It's time for today's podcast conversation. All right, Philippians 2. We're going to start in 14 for this podcast. Last week we did 12 through 13. We're going to get 14 to 18 today, or at least the bulk of it. I got to get focused here. I come out here to do a podcast. I've done everything but do a podcast. I've done email and text and all the things. And so, I can look at the table. I'm like, this is what you came out here for. So let's get on this. It says, do all things, Paul writing, do all things without grumbling or disputing. What does all mean? I think it means all. That you may be blameless and innocent children of God without blemish in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world. The very first ministry I ever had, my father-in-law, after a revival, they had this puppet ministry, said, hey, you think you guys could do one of those things? I said, we'll give it a try. I had about 4 days of puppet experience, and so I said, let's try it. We built a puppet stage, we bought puppets, we did this whole children's ministry deal where we would do all this stuff. The very first ministry name we had for that, it was the only ministry name I should say, for that puppet deal was Salt and Light Puppets, and it was based on Matthew 5:13 to 16. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world, right? That's what we wanted to be. They were vibrant and loud and fun and all the crazies, and the kids loved it. We wanted to be salt and light. We're to be salt and light. You are to shine as lights in the world. Yeah, that's a good idea, Paul. However, you don't understand my situation. Actually, Paul's sitting in prison, so we may not fully understand his situation. We've talked before about people in other parts of the world. The Church in Chains is a website I've referenced a number of times, a ministry that documents and comes alongside people who are put in prison for all these accusations. Essentially, it's because they're a Christian. They're a Christian in a country that hates Christians. And so they come alongside them, and you hear these people have this testimony, this story to tell. I was talking to a friend of mine last night on Zoom. He and his family are walking through some really hard things, and his wife and my wife, Marco Polo. I don't know if you know what that is. It's like an app. It's kind of like FaceTime, but you can send videos back and forth. They do it all the time. They've done it for 8 years. And his wife is Marco Poloing my wife, and my kids are in the kitchen. My daughter specifically were like, it's amazing that through all this hardship that they're going through right now, they continue to give glory to God. It would be easy in that video to say what you really feel or what you really want to say. No, they're saying, God, you're on your throne, and we believe it. We don't just believe it in the good times. We believe it in the trying times. We don't just believe it when the sun is shining. We believe it when we haven't seen the sun in days or weeks. We believe it when we got food on the table. We believe it when the cupboards are sparse. You're always on your throne, and that's where your faith comes in. Paul says, do all things without grumbling or disputing. All things. I can do some things without grumbling or disputing. I can feel like I'm tracking pretty good today. I know what I think my schedule is today, and I gotta be honest, I kind of like my schedule. I kind of carved it out. I think I had it. And I walk in the kitchen, and one of my kids said, hey, don't forget at this time I need you to do That's right. Probably need to set an alarm because I'll forget that. And then you get the notification on your phone. You got an email that you need to respond. Yeah, I probably need to get to that. And okay, that needs to be addressed. And before long, what was just such this wonderful day, then you're like, oh, I got this, that, or the other. Do all things without grumbling or disputing. How are you doing with that? I'm lousy at that. And I'm not saying that to give us an out. I'm saying that is wrong. Because when I'm grumbling and disputing, I'm typically not just doing it to myself. Do you know people like this? When they have a bad day, when they have a problem with another individual, when they're frustrated, tired, angry, whatever it is, they have to bring people in on it. And not only bring you in on it, if you don't match the emotion of that individual, they'll dismiss you and they're now upset at you. If they're mad at, Bob over here, and you're not mad at Bob over here, well, then now you're on his side. You're not, or if they say, I'm so busy, I'm so worn out, I'm so tired, and you don't empathize with them, then they're upset at you. We're guilty of this too. It just looks different. Do all things without grumbling or disputing. I do that pretty well until I start driving. Until maybe put it a different way, until I'm in the car where my kids are learning to drive. With me, yeah, people get on my nerves, but I've been driving for 30 some years now. I'm kind of used to it. I think people in this city drive worse than anybody I've ever seen on the planet. I owe some apologies to people from Missouri because, where I lived, we were Missouri, Iowa, and Illinois on the same spot. And we'd always, the Missouri drivers, no, they ain't got nothing on Indianapolis drivers. These people here think they are in the 500, and they're not. However, I can handle it. But when my kid's driving, I get a little more angry, frustrated. I can't say it because I don't want to make my kid get nervous, but I'm trying to tell him, hey, it's okay. This is how people drive. You can't do anything about it. But inside, you're like, boy, I'd like to do something about it. Do all things without grumbling or disputing, that you may be blameless. That's your discount code today, blameless. All capital letters, one word. Blameless and innocent. How many days have you spent on this planet that you would say blameless? That was a blameless day. I don't think I have any. I don't think I have any days where I'm like blameless. And you know why? People, circumstances, news stories, politics, taxes. I mean, man, how long we got here? It doesn't take a whole lot. It doesn't take a whole. You go through drive-through, you get your food. I've said before, there's people that say, hey, I'll eat whatever they give me, no big deal. And there's other people going in and they're going to, bring down fire and brimstone because you got my nuggets wrong, right? Blameless. As a Christian, we're supposed to be blameless. And you say, that's impossible. Do you know where I live? Do you know who I'm around? Do you know where I work? Nope. But I know that in Genesis 6, Noah lived in a place and in a time that was so bad that God said, I'm going to destroy the earth with the earth. And so until God destroys the earth with the earth, wherever you're at, it's just a spot below where Noah was at least. And Noah was considered blameless, not sinless, but he was considered blameless. Think about Lot. He lived in a place that God said, I'm wiping that place out. Any places on the planet that you're like, how has God not already wiped that place out? Oh yeah. Anything you see on the news or anywhere, you're like, how has God not just took that place out? Well, that's how bad Sodom and Gomorrah was. It was worse than that. And God said, I'm going to destroy it. And Lot was saved. It's a terrible, miserable story, but Lot himself and his two daughters are saved. And that was it. That's all that came out of that place. Well, Noah was blameless, not sinless, blameless. And Paul says we're to be blameless and innocent children of God without blemish in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation. Everyone's like, yeah, crooked. There are old guys sitting at a Denny's right now or at a McDonald's or where else do you do that? At IHOP, Hardee's, I don't know. Whoever opens their doors, crack of dawn, and allows 6 old men to sit in the corner and drink the same cup of coffee for 3.5 hours. There are men right now, you know it, who've already peruse the morning paper and are talking about how crooked and twisted this current generation is. That's what they do. They could disciple people. They could go visit sick and shut-ins. They could go make sure, widows have their grass mowed and, leaves raked and their cars are running right. And they could, help out with people. No, we're just going to sit there and we're just going to talk about how good we did and how bad they're doing. If we're not careful, we repeat that. I think it's great that 6 old men, I'm just giving you a number, will get together in a booth and there's guys that couldn't find 5 guys to join them. But let's make sure that what we're doing is closer to what Paul wrote here. He says, holding fast to the word of life, so that in the day of Christ I may be proud that I did not run in vain or labor in vain. 3 John 4 says, I have no greater joy than to see that my children are walking with the Lord. He's not talking about his kids. He's talking about children in faith. He said, I came back, I checked. There's nothing greater than to hear that they're walking with Jesus. I want you to consider this. I believe Paul wrote this. I believe it is divinely inspired by God. God inspired Paul what to write. I believe a church received this. I believe somehow they preserved this. So somehow we're able to have this. How that happens over time, I don't know. But I want you to consider for just a minute here yourself in the room when this letter was delivered and read. And I don't think it was just read one time, put on a shelf and said, everybody got it? Good. No, I think it's probably something they poured over several times. So I want you to consider what we just said here. Do all things without grumbling or disputing, that you may be blameless and innocent children of God without blemish in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world. Supposed to shine as a light in the world. Yeah. Holding fast to the word of life, so that in the day of Christ I may be proud that I did not run in vain or labor in vain. And then he goes on to say, even if I'm poured out as a drink offering upon the sacrificial offering of your faith, I'm glad and rejoice with you all. Likewise, you should also be glad and rejoice with me. Now, you can read that in folding chairs in a circle. You can listen to me read that very quickly, albeit, in your truck or as you're walking or working out or whatever. And we can hear it and we can move on. I can read it. I'll close the book. I got a few more things I got to get done today. And then I go about my business. And next time we'll pick up in verse 19. We'll talk about Timothy. Don't miss this. What he's talking about here is the way that they live, their attitude, their behaviors, the way that they're treating one another, the way that they're gathering together as an assembly of people, the way that the body of Christ is supposed to build one another up. He said, oh, I know that generation is twisted and crooked. You say, yeah, we got something pretty similar. How many of you would take it well if your pastor, your preacher, your small group leader, whatever, was telling you something as direct as Paul says here about the way you act, the way that you treat people, your attitude, your behavior? How would you handle that? Because it is my experience, very few people would take that well at all. In my mind, I'm thinking of a couple that if you did it the right way, they're so sound in their character, they're so sound in their theology, they're disciplined in their life as far as their prayer life. I'm thinking fasting, I'm thinking a genuine care for others, that if you go to them and you said something to them, I think they could absorb it. You go a little rope-a-dope, right? I'm taking a jab or two. It hurts a little bit. That was a blind spot. I didn't know that about myself. I wasn't thinking it was that big a deal. Most people, this is what I want you to get, man. Most people would not take this well. This is the reason why a lot of men struggle with church. I've said it before. You see a guy like myself telling you how you should act, and you think, who do you think you are? I'm not going to do anything that you tell me to do. I actually had a guy tell me that at lunch one time. He said, if I feel like someone's telling me what to do, I don't want to do it. well, you're going to have a hard time following Jesus. You're like, well, I just followed Jesus, Jarrett. Yeah, well, you're going to find out as you follow Jesus that God intentionally puts people in our life to help us understand Jesus. That God's speaking through other people, not just you, and not just the people that you're okay with. Not just the people who benefit from your electric bill payment. He's speaking through other people. And if you're in a Bible-believing church, you're in a Bible-believing small group, you're in a Bible-believing community that talk about the Bible, there's going to be some things, myself included, that I hear it or read it and think, ouch. But that's what's supposed to happen. Do you want to become a 75-year-old man who had his eyes open but ears closed for the last several years because he just couldn't handle it? Do you want to be that 75-year-old man that nobody can tell anything to? Don't say anything about his character. Don't say anything about how he treats people. Don't say anything about how he overtalks them or how he does it. He can't handle it. He's going to get mad. He won't talk to you for a few weeks. He's going to let you know. He's going to get very passive. Don't do that. You know people like that. The reason why we're having this conversation right now is so that we don't become that. Don't be that guy that gets his feelings hurt and he sits in the corner. He's got his arms crossed, or he gets very passive aggressive, or he shuts down. I heard someone say it the other day about their spouse. Like they can't have a conversation about spiritual things because if the spouse feels like there's pushback against their viewpoint, they just shut down. I thought, yep, I've seen that. I've seen that happen with that individual. I know what you're talking about. What is that? There's a word for it, and it's called immaturity. And you can only handle milk. If we're going to be grown men, if we're going to have men conversations, then we need to evaluate how are we really living our life and how is that being perceived by others in a generation that it's easy to blame, but Paul says don't do it. You're to be blameless. You're to shine as a light in the midst of this generation. You are without excuse because you have God living inside of you. They don't. So you can't expect them to live by those same standards. And it doesn't matter whatever standards they project on you. You live to God's standards. However, we're without excuse. He says, I want to be proud that I did not run in vain or labor in vain. 3 John 4, no greater joy than to see my children walking with the Lord. The person that brought the gospel to you, there will be no greater joy for them to see that you're bringing the gospel to somebody else. Consider it. Can I handle it if someone told me the truth about how I live, my character, my behavior? Or would I pull away? Would I shut down? Would I disappear? And if you do, that's immaturity. And if you don't, that means you're a man of character. Man, thanks for listening. Thank you guys for watching. Appreciate you all share the show. Let's keep pursuing biblical manliness.